Welcome. My name is Meli Bandera. I am the Surface Design Association inaugural artist in residence. I'm pleased to welcome you to this week's Textile Talk, Traditions and Persistence, highlighting makers and writers from across Latin America. Textile Talk webinars are weekly Zoom webinars brought to you by four partnering organizations: the International Quilt Museum, Quilt Alliance, Studio Art Quilt Associates, and Surface Design Association, or SDA as it is commonly known. SDA has been an international leader in the fiber arts for nearly 50 years. Our diverse community includes studio artists, designers, educators, curators, gallery owners, students, and writers with a shared passion for fiber art. Being a member of SDA offers opportunities to exhibit your work, access new skills, grow your artist network, and learn from a broad range of artists working from around the world. Every member has access to our quarterly publication, bringing the world of contemporary fiber arts to your fingertips. We welcome you to our community. Please visit our website to start your membership. First-time members can use the code TALKS for 10% off their membership. We have two calls for entry we'd love to see you submit your work for. Textiles, the language of fiber, explores language in all its expressive forms. Written, spoken, and illustrative. SDA seeks artists whose work engages broadly with ideas of communication, from poetry and prose to computer code, indexing, and archiving. As it relates to the grammar of textiles and the vocabulary of fiber, submit your work by March 16th, 2026. And we just opened up our 2026 International Exhibition in Print, Memory Myth, and I'm excited to announce that I will be the guest juror for this exhibition. Memory and Myth considers artistic practice as a site for storytelling, where lived experience, inherited knowledge, and imagined worlds converge through creativity and the skill of the maker. Submit your work by May 18th, 2026. Lastly, our spring workshops are starting soon. We still have space in several sessions spanning from lace to e-textiles and papermaking to surface design. We'd love to have you join us online as we learn from renowned artists and gather in the community. As we get started, I have a few housekeeping announcements. We welcome questions, which we'll answer at the end of all the artist presentations. Please submit them in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. We are honored to bring you free and inspiring Textile Talks programming. We respectfully ask you to be courteous as you engage with speakers, moderators, and other participants. Your chat comments can be seen by everyone. Please use the Q&A for questions, chat box for greeting others, and survey for comments. In today's presentation about SDA's Winter Journal, Traditions and Persistence, we highlight makers and writers across Latin America, exploring the art practices of one of the most ethnically diverse areas of the planet. We'll hear from guest editor Giannina Coppiano Dwin, artist Lisu Vega, and writer Francine Birbragher. We'll explore the materials and motivations behind their work while deepening our understanding of textile art's enduring legacy across time and locales. Giannina Dwin is a multidisciplinary artist and curator. She creates installations, sculpture, ceramics, photography, and performance. Her work has been included in national and international exhibitions as part of solo and group shows. She is also the recipient of the prestigious South Florida Cultural Consortium Fellowship, among many other awards, sponsorships, and art residencies. She has completed public art sculptures for Broward County Cultural Council and the city of West Palm Beach, among others. Welcome, Giannina.
Hello. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction, Meli. I will start by showing some of my work and then talk about the amazing experience of putting together the writers and artists for this edition. Although my MFA is in ceramics, I started to experiment with other materials, and I ended up, because of what I was trying to say and what informed my work, using ephemeral materials. Some of the work you will see is made from perishable resources and mostly food. The first slide, please. The first slide, this is a camisole, which is laid out on a platform and is made out entirely of sugar. It is life size and about size 8 or 10 women's size. Next, please. The long dress that you see here, which was shown at the Culinary Museum in Delray Beach, is sold about 16 inches long. And as with all my installations, it was destroyed at the end of the exhibition. Next, please. Thank you. As you can see, I'm addressing the female body with most of this series work. And the female body can be maternal, can be a maternal body, can be a sexual body, but it also talks about youth, finery, as well as not lasting, talks about aging and transformation, because the material is temporary, like everything in the universe. The white underwear is sugar. The red one is chili powder. And in a way, I'm trying to subvert the saying sugar and spice and everything nice. Next, please. This dress was constructed in situ and presented at the Hudson River Museum in New York. It was extremely detailed, which is not possible to appreciate in here. It was also life-size. Next, please. And this image here is the dress as it was originally done, and then at the end of the exhibition, after it's transformed into nothingness, it's just a pile of salt again. All my work is ephemeral, as you can see. Well, all the work that I do on this material is ephemeral. Next, please. This started as a dress, as you see on the left, and then I added an ocean as the train of the dress. This was very large and about 200 pounds of salt. It was at an exhibition for the University of Texas at the IMAS Museum. Next. I started to think about the oceans. There are many reasons, environmental reasons, that I wanted to call attention to the oceans and to sea level.
Yeah, it looks like you froze. If you can hear this, you try exiting and coming back into the webinar. Hold on just a second for us, folks. Let's give her one more minute, see if she's able to reconnect. And if not, why don't we move on to Lisu and we can come back around to Gia when she can get back on. Let's see, Meli, would you come back on and introduce Lisu, and then we'll come back around to Giannina.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll hear from Lisu Vega. Lisu Vega is a multidisciplinary artist born in Miami and raised in Maracaibo, Venezuela. Her practice spans engraving, photography, fiber and textile art, sculpture and immersive installation, exploring sustainability, migration, memory, and identity through material-driven processes. Her exhibition record is extensive for solo and group exhibitions both in the US and internationally, and in the publication Le Fil, Thread in Contemporary Art, written by Charlotte Vanier, published in 2025 in France by Pyramid Publishing.
Hello, everyone. Meli, thank you so much for the introduction. Okay. Can we go to the next page, if it's possible? Okay, got it. Okay. Part of my practice, the beginning of my career, was also working with experimental engraving. So the beginning of my practice, when I created it, is like I try to find objects on the street, metal pieces to oxidate and create assemblage and installations. With the metal pieces, I create a oxidator, and then I also use the rope as another elements, like to oxidate and weaving too. So in the beginning of the PDF, I try to create, like part of the process and how everything the memories connect. My ancestral connection, my grandmother and my great grandfather was a weavers. They are original from Colombia, between Colombia and Venezuela. They're indigenous, Guajiros, and all that connection what I have to weaving, it's coming, like from that side. So I also, like try to observe, try to get, like connect with memories with present, past, and future. And I try, like to weaving in many different ways as possible. So I want to take a look at the second page in order to describe the process. Can you go to the next page? So this is, like part of how my work it is. I'm working with recycle. I'm working with a lot of recycled material. Part of my practice is working with sustainable elements, find objects, and I have a lot of database from photography too. But also because I born in Miami, I raised in Venezuela, and I have a lot of childhood memories. I know that is connected. I just have really good memories to my grandmother sewing, in the sewing machine, or creating when she was weaving, the hammocks, all that is connect me. In particular, this project, I try to come back to my roots, try to mix the oxidation, what already experimenting in the early 2000s, with metal pieces I found on the street, and that's why I showed the two small ones on top, because that's how the project beginning, and we had the final results, in the middle of the exhibition already with shadows. I really love, like to working with shadows in order to create a new landscaping. And my main installations is take sometimes a while, like can take probably like 3 or 4 years because I have to wait to get more material in order to increase. And then different process of oxidation happening. Can you go to the next page, please? So this is some of the projects I created for the MoCA in Arlington. It's the first time I did in a large scale the video projection, which one is the base of that was creating with many different elements I bring when I left my country. So I have buttons from my grandmother, buttons, like from my aunts. I just pretty much the second photo is where you see it. It is I disconnect the rope and I create like a new layer in order to use that to create the work, to assemblage. And the metal is a metal base to try to do like fiber sculpture hanging from the ceiling and project some image which can remind me, like, oh, the emptiness, how I feeling to leave my country. And I left my country to say I want to come back. But and then, like many situations happening and just decide, like to building my family here. So just like part of my practice also connecting with the memories, like family, heritage, the ancestral connections, and the database from the childhood memories. Can we go to the second page? So this is a project I created for the Frank Gallery last year. I was been working for this project almost 2 years because it is different panel with a metal base, and I have to oxidate, put on the backyard, use the coffee pigment or the grass, or like oxidate the metal in order to stain the rope. And after that was installing, in 8 different panels, and I have to weaving and connected all the panels together. And I try to drawing, like all the rope, like projecting on the wall. Of course, when I present, like this type of project always can be different because it's like assemblage. And sometimes, it takes more time because I have to wait, in order to get more material to increase. So that means most of the time I'm working with 3 or 4 different projects at the same time. Can we go to the next page? And then this one is something really emotional. I connect, like with the poetry at the same time. This project I presented from the Florida Prize last year, and it was a tree of my memories. I was always question myself, and I was, like try to see why I always create in a large installation. I try to do like a big tree with some like big roots, around. And I had the chance, like to create a project inspired on my grandmother's legacy, which when she was a seamstress, and everything I know from the seamstress side to sewing to weaving was from her side. And I remotely directed the photo shoot of my grandmother's house, which one is the same photo are in the beginning of the PDF. And then I see everything in this common sense, like I see the big tree with the old chair, like was from her. Unfortunately, she passed away during COVID time in 2021. And because she was my mentor, gave me like a big, deep black hole, in my life. And I tried to connect myself. And I see, like it was a really beautiful moment to celebrate her legacy. And I decided also to connect not only with the rope, not only to weaving, it's also to create a poetry. So right now I'm weaving with phrases and with words. And I create like a poem, like to connect with the installation. So this is pretty much, is represent her mango tree connects to the chair, but this piece in particular is taking me around like 5 years to do it because I was connected separate and then I have to install in the piece. It's around 17 by 10. Can we go to the next one? And then, like, for example, like this part of the textile and photographic image and memories, like in this part, I realized, like during the perimenopause moments, like we starting lost a lot of memories, like from now. But I also, like discover and remember right now so many memories from my childhood side. And then I just try, like to connect. But in that way, how I want to do it is using the same element as a rope, disconnecting trims by trims. And I create layer by layer in order to do like a fingerprint, which one is the photography transfer by sublimation on the surface. And that's how I create, like the big installation. Another really beautiful thing I really want to express, of that is like the way how I try to connect my heritage, my ancestor legacy with my kids, like they are part of my process. And this installation was presented in the Pembroke Pine in 2024. Can we go to the next page, please? So this is some of details, like this is like a big photo booth of Lisu and her family, many different moments. And I try, like also to reuse the remain for paper. Not only when I transfer the image and a fragment in the surface, it's like many different processes happening. It's a lot of details, a lot of observations, in order to see how the image reactive on the surface transfer by sublimation around like 375 to 400 Fahrenheit for around 1 minute. So after that, after transfer that image on the surface, I have the remains of paper, which has already the rope intervened, like on the paper. And I reusing again to transfer the see-through fabric in order to create, like the memory house fade out. And that's, like how this is installation coming. Next page, please. And then this one is like really, this is like the show I presented tomorrow. Tomorrow I had the opening at the MDC Kendall, and this is the first time I presented the 10 different panels. This project, has that 20 different image. What's happening with this project is like remember some moments when I traveled to one city to another city to visit my family, my grandmothers. They are really important in my life, and everything I know, was connected, like from that beautiful memories, like with my 2 grandmothers. But in particular, this one is I imagine that little girl, 6 years old, with the window, looking the window at how the landscape changed radical. And then right now, like 5 years ago, I was in a train and I feel the same emotion I had when I was like 6 years old. And then I try, like to collect, I didn't say I'm a photographer, but part of my practice is takes a lot of photos, like for inspirations, like to collect as a reference, all to keep the moment alive, and connect me with some emotions. So I have like, I don't know, probably like 20,000 database, photos from the last 25 years of my entire practice. And I'm just at this moment with this project, I try to weave in the image. So this is called imaginary landscaping. This is a project which one is in different time. It is photos from Portugal, from Venezuela, from Miami, and then also it's changed the reality. When you see in a larger scale, it's like 5 by 15, it's transferred front and back, and you see something going on. I see like, I know, I already went there, or I know this place, but it is when you start to see it, you see how the image connected. I didn't like to say collage, because in that way, like I just really carefully when the image finish and how it can connect with another one. So I believe, it's like many different ways to weaving, and not only with fiber, we can weaving with the poetry, we can weaving with the image, in many different ways as possible. And then this is showing, it's starting tomorrow in Miami, in Kendall, at 6:30. Can we go to the next page? And then this one it's the roots. This one is I try to recreate every single piece. It's a fragment from my grandmother's house. When I remotely direct the photo shoot, like about her house, like Venezuela confront a lot of a huge political situation. And unfortunately, we have like different times with no power. And then during the beautiful moments I had with my grandmother in the past is between 1 to 3 p.m. We can take a little break and we wait to we are in the mango tree and I help to clean the backyard. So during that, the photographer, unfortunately, they don't have a light. And I just say, I really want to get the natural light of the house. And we recording and take photos of every single elements, like remind me something. So we're talking about this entire exhibition has probably like a 200 image front and back from different angles of my grandmother's house. And just clean it, every single mango leaf, like I'm put over there. And the idea it is like really like a big mango roots, like connect with all the memories I have with my grandmother. Can we go to the next page? Thank you. And this is like work in action, like part of my practice, I really want to involve people, like experiment more, to create fiber more in like a contemporary side, like how we can connect, like to do brailler, like how we can connect, like to creating poems, in a sign language. And this is this installation I created, like for the Frank Gallery, but also this exhibition is so important for me because I'm starting to create a poem, and every single poem connect with the main installation. So this one is like favorite roots, how I feel, and like you don't feel identified with some places, and you don't feel identified with another places, and how sometimes lonely you feel in your life. So just like it is, this specific exhibition has 3 different poetries who connect you with all the installations. Can we go to the next page? Yeah, so this one is like my last page, like this is I try always to try to connect the same experience I had with my grandmother during my early 4 years old. I just used to live with her, and I was sleeping when she was in the sewing machine. And I try, like to connect that emotion with my kids. So they help me, like to connect the image. They help me, like during the process. And it's like some key, are so important, like the mango tree with the chair, my grandmother connection, like with the sewing machine, or the car when my grandmother driving, my other grandmother driving, like, and we try to go to one town to another one. Those emotions, are always with me, keep me going, like to create more healing many different like many different situations of my life, but also, like to see how we can connect and weaving and extend how proud we are with our ancestors, with the next generation, And thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisu.
Thank you.
So I think that Giannina is back. So we're going to go back to Giannina's presentation.
Hello. Hello, and I apologize. It's just a big disconnection. They've been working outside on some of the cables, so I don't know, maybe that was that. We were, yes, exactly at this one. And what I was saying is that I started to do a lot of oceans. This next one is fairly large. It took about 400 pounds of salt, and it was done during Miami Art Week at Art Basel with Spinello Projects. And the oceans started to get very realistic. Could we go to the next, please? And these are just samples that you can see close-ups of what it looks like. Yeah, different. You can go to the next one also, 1, 2, 3, pretty quick. Yes, thank you. And then the next slide is an actual fiber piece. It is made out of lace and all the fabrics and sequin. And the roots are made from embroidery yarn. I have made in the past also some work in fiber, but this was the most recent one. And next slide, please. There was a performance with this piece. I was sewing all through the performance while a singer was singing folk songs. It was a really beautiful experience. Next, please. Then we're going to start with my ceramic work. I do a little bit of ceramics also, because like I mentioned, that was my MFA. And these, the one on the right, the white ones are seeds. It's about 60 or 70 of them, and just taking inspirations from the different shapes. On the right are mangroves. It's a sculpture made out of clay and mangroves. Very inspired because they are essential to our area to keep the ocean in check, and many other advantages that it would take a long time to talk about. But I've been thinking a lot about seeds and plants and their transformation into from the seeds to the plants to eventual fruits. And the next slide, please, this is a set of, I have more than these, I'm just showing these 3. These are tropical fruits, completely imaginary tropical fruits. And at the moment, I'm showing them at Collective 62 in Miami. The title of the installation that I have there is Exotics. I'm not from here, but neither are you. And the next one, please. This is also ceramics. I can sculpt a full body in ceramics, and I chose to do this series of hands holding seeds, like whorls in the hands. And now the next slide, I'm going to start talking about being the guest editor for this amazing edition of Traditions and Persistence. I'm showing these maps because, as I expressed in my essay as guest editor, I saw this as an incredible opportunity to demonstrate both ancient history and textile production in the Americas, in the whole continent. And it's a vibrant, there are some amazing, vibrant contemporary expressions. It was also a chance to give voice to groups that are sometimes mistakenly clumped together as one people, and to highlight how the diverse environments of these vastly different communities have profoundly influenced and shaped the production and the vision of the artist in the present. And also when sometimes migration is involved, like in many cases that you're going to read about in the magazine, it gives us a landscape of a south to north diaspora. The map next to it is South Florida, where I reside, which is a richly multicultural environment. There's people from all over the Americas and the world, and it's not difficult. It wasn't difficult at all to select the remarkable lineup of contributors for this issue. My art practice takes me all over, from Palm Beach to Miami, everywhere. And it is within this local art world that is sustained by exhibitions and art talks and museums and conferences that I got my inspiration here. And also in this region, there is a lot of fiber artists, therefore a lot of fiber exhibitions, and therefore a big possibility of contributors. Some I was very familiar with, I knew very well, and others I had to research and found that way. And what I wanted to do was to include artists whose work would reflect the endurance and transformation of tradition, like we saw with Lisu. And some artists are writing about their own practice, while others are historians, art writers, curators, critics, who are knowledgeable about the contemporary fiber artists that are influenced by or rooted in First Nations communities. There was also a great open call, and we got some very interesting proposals that came through, and we picked from some. The next slide, please. This is an artist from Venezuela. His name is Pepe Lopez Reus. And I had seen him at a talk at Espacio 23, which is an important cultural hub. It's local, and they have an incredible collection, excellent exhibitions, and a residency program. And when I saw his work, I thought it would be great to show someone that has worked with people in the Amazon. Peoples whose supply of fiber to work with is mostly vegetable fiber and not wool or cotton, as is the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of fiber. At least to me, my brain goes to wools, sheep, camelids, cotton, but the environment restricts and dictates what one can use if you have limited access to resources. Also, if you have an abundance of a certain resource, you are bound to use what you have. So I thought, geography dictated a lot of the output. And with his work, going back to Pepe's work, it shows how even in remote areas, people are touched by mass marketing of brands and information that now reaches even remote places. It begins to change those cultures, and he's trying to show us that. Next slide, please. This is Diana Eusebio, and Candy Lopez wrote about it. Candy is an artist, a fiber artist herself, an amazing fiber artist herself, and she's a good friend. We received our master's degree from the same university, in different years, of course, but we go back a bit. When I approached her to do about the project, she immediately knew who she wanted to write about. And I could not have been happier. Diana Eusebio is a local fiber artist who has a studio at the Bakehouse in Miami, and she uses pre-Columbian dyeing techniques to infuse color to her photographic prints, which she then quilts. And this particular work has such a surreal quality to me. It gives me the feeling of a swampy underwater landscape, very South Florida-like. Next slide, please. Francine, who is also part of this talk today, is a well-known and well-respected in the Miami area for all her writing and curation of amazing exhibitions. I was thrilled when she accepted to write an article about Sandra Monterroso's work for the Traditions and Persistence issue. The first thing about Sandra's work is the color, is the first thing that jumps at you. And then the concept of the work starts to make sense. Her processes and the concept, as well as her trajectory into this art universe, are very well laid out by Francine's very clear writing. The next slide, please. This is Tiago Braga. Tiago works with communities in South Brazil that use ancestral practices which are in danger of disappearing. And they work with wool, cotton, and other fibers that he designs into modern designs that are inspired by the area's landscapings, landscape, the pampas, and places like that. There are pampas also not only in Argentina, but also in Brazil. I met Tiago in 2023 when we were in the same exhibition during Paris Design Week. And I loved his work. And when I was giving this amazing opportunity to put together this issue, he definitely came to mind. Adriana Herrera writes about Manuel Chavajay and Chen Cortez, as well as Antonio Pichilla. These artists live in Guatemala, in the area of Lake Atitlan, which I have been very lucky to be there. And the area of Lake Atitlan, the landscape alone of that lake can fill you with beauty and such respect for nature that any creative soul would not need anything else to get inspired. To these artists, tradition and ancient knowledge passed down through generations is the rock, but also the complications of living in the world today and their way into their concepts, the way that things happen into their lives are woven into the concepts of their production too. Their exhibition record is as outstanding as their work. And the writer, Adriana Herrera, she runs a very prestigious foundation in Miami, the Aluna Foundation, and she has curated shows and has written for important art sources and newspapers. And I was very, very excited when she agreed to collaborate in this issue. There are so many other people that I could talk to, but we have limited time. I do say, please get that magazine. It is the journal is just amazing. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Giannina. Now, we will hear from our final presenter, Francine Birbragher. Francine is an art historian, independent curator, and art critic. She's a founding and contributing editor of Art Nexus magazine and the executive director curator of Art Nexus Space in North Miami, Florida. She is also the artistic director of the Fundación País in Guatemala. Since 1989, she has written about modern and contemporary art for specialized magazines, newspapers, artist monographs, and exhibition catalogs. As an independent curator, she has organized over 100 exhibitions in the United States and Latin America, including the 23rd País Biennial in Guatemala. She currently serves on the board of directors at the Friends of the Uffizi Gallery, Florence, Italy.
Thank you, Meli. Thank you, everybody, for attending today's talk. And I want to start by thanking Giannina for inviting me to collaborate in this wonderful edition of the Surface Design Journal dedicated to textile and fiber art. I'm also honored to participate in today's talk and to share with you my approach to textile art as an art historian and curator. When Giannina asked me to share the motivation behind my work, it led me to think about something I really never questioned before. Where does my passion for artistic expression based on fiber and textile come from? Next slide, please. So I go back to my childhood in Colombia, where I grew up, and I lived until I was 22. My father, may he rest in peace, was a geographer, so we travel extensively, especially to the highlands in Colombia. It's called the Altiplano Cundiboyacense. And in that area, traditional weaving in towns like Nopsa and Sogamoso in Boyacá is a centuries-old mestizo heritage renowned for the handcraft production of sweaters, and particularly the ruanas, the ponchos, made from pure sheep's wool. They use handlooms and ancestral techniques, and they create dense, warm garments essential for the cold climate that symbolize identity and cultural resilience, fusing indigenous cotton with Spanish wool. So these are the kind of garments that I used when I was growing up. So I had it from the beginning. I had that relationship with that type of textile. Next slide, please. But on the other hand, my maternal family, who migrated from Europe and settled in Barranquilla on the Caribbean coast, And that's where the world-renowned carnival takes place every year. As a matter of fact, I came back yesterday from Carnival. I've been attending Carnival for over 25 years. Declared by UNESCO Masterpiece of Oral and Intangible Heritage, Barranquilla's Carnival features vibrant textiles, masks, and elaborate costumes representing African, indigenous, and European traditions. Key iconic costumes include the marimonda, which you see on your right, and that's the one that I actually wear when I parade on carnivals on a yearly basis. In the middle, you have the Congo, which is obviously very much influenced by African traditions, and the Garabato on the left of the screen, which is mostly influenced by Spanish background and traditions. All these costumes, or at least most of them, are handmade and embellished with ribbons and sequins. So there's a lot of vibrant textile and decorative handcrafted activities going on for these kind of events. Next slide, please. So if you are familiar with Colombia, you probably have seen this kind of hat. So the volteado hat is an iconic garment of the area called, where the Senu culture originated in the Colombian Caribbean region, especially in the areas of Córdoba and Sucre. So on the picture on the left, you see a pair of a couple dancing the cumbia, which is a national dance of Colombia, but it obviously comes from the Caribbean region. And the man holds this hat, which is hand woven from fibra de caña de flecha, which translates arrow cane fiber. And it symbolizes indigenous heritage, the richness of local flora and fauna, and it has become the national symbol of identity. And in this last carnival, unfortunately, I had already provided my slide presentation. There was a group that was that used this kind of woven fiber, the caña de flecha, to create the whole costume, and it was absolutely beautiful. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned before, I'm not the artist, but I am a writer. And in 1976, my mother founded the Art Nexus Art in Colombia. And in 1991, I had already joined the team, and we changed the name of the international edition to Art Nexus to reflect its editorial content. It's a magazine that focuses mainly on Latin American art. From its inception, the magazine has served to document the history of Latin American art in real time, and this includes numerous artists working with textile and fiber. So the cover on the left is of the original magazine Arte en Colombia. That was the fourth edition, published in 1977, and it shows a work by Hernando Tejada called Paula the Cage Woman, inspired by Colombian crafts. So at the time, it was pretty admirable when painting, traditional painting and sculpture and engraving was really the trend, and the influence of Western art history canons were imposed, that the editorial group, really considered and supported these artists working outside of the box, and very much influenced by Colombian crafts. On the right is the last issue of Art Nexus with Jimena Garrido Leca, Realignments 1 and 2 work, which is woven copper wire inspired by Andean culture and modernization. She's a Peruvian artist, and those of you who are in Miami know that a piece very similar to this one that's on the cover was chosen Art Basel as the Miami Beach acquisition piece. And with these kind of beautiful woven copper pieces, she's actually making a political statement about the exploitation of copper and the conditions of copper miners in Peru. I also want to talk a little bit about what I've been writing about since 1989. And I was not really aware of how important these artists working with fibers and textile were in my own artistic sensitivity. And I'm going to mention some of the names of artists that I've written extensively about. Of course, Olga de Amaral, who is a Colombian artist who recently had very important exhibition in Paris and Miami. And I met her when I was a child, and I remember visiting the atelier when, at the time, she was truly a pioneer working on textile from a visual arts perspective, as an artist, not just as a craft person. Marilyn Bororbor from Guatemala, Carola Bravo, she's Venezuelan living in Miami, Manuel Chavajay, which Giannina mentioned earlier, Sandra Monterroso, who's the topic of the essay that I participated in the magazine, in the journal, Evelyn Pulitzer, she's also based in Miami, Juana Valdez, she's Cuban, living in Massachusetts, but also with a studio in Miami. Of course, Cecilia Vicuña, who I've been very honored and privileged to write about and work with for exhibitions, and Liberty Worth in California. Next slide, please. In 2022, I was given the opportunity to curate a show called Subverting Materials, Textile and Fiber Art by Women Artists at the Museum of Contemporary Art of the Americas in Kendall. And I included women artists who work in textile. The works that you see on the left, the first one is a detail of one of Evelyn Pulitzer's pieces that has a poem on it. And the one in the middle is actually a piece by Liberty Worth. She does this kind of like collage with residues of fabrics. And the one on the right is Carla Kantorovich. She's originally from Mexico, also based in Miami. The exhibition also included works by Aimee Garcia, Aimee Perez, Alinson Kotzik, Yvonne Ferrer, and Milena Martinez Pedrosa, and Valerie Lindus Garten. Next slide, please. So as, and you also mentioned, I was honored to co-curate the 23rd Bienal de Arte País in Guatemala, and that's how my relationship with Guatemala started. And we were very interested in making the biennial a platform, not only for Guatemalan artists, but for artists from Latin America who had a relationship with Guatemalan culture. Guatemala is the only country in Latin America where the majority of its citizens are actually of Mayan descent or are considered indigenous citizens. So indigenous traditions are extremely important, and within that, obviously, textile plays a significant role. So what we did is we selected 30 individual artists and collectives, and we invited, through their works, people to reflect on global issues that affect the lives of the marginalized. They dealt with systemic violence towards the land, the territory, the body, culture, the community, questioning whether it's possible to imagine a future of possibilities and lives in common. So we had a significant number of indigenous artists from Argentina, Chile, Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Mexico, Costa Rica. And then we also had an interesting number of Caribbean based artists or originally from the Caribbean. And we had a significant number of works made out of textile or fiber. So I chose three images because I know we have a limited time because we have to do also the Q&A. So the piece on the left of the screen, that is a work by Manuel Chavajay and Chen Cortez, which Giannina mentioned earlier. Adriana Herrera wrote about them for the journal. And I do want to mention that the one who was working as an artist was Manuel Chavajay, and Juan Canela, the co-curator, visited them, and we found out that the one who has the dreams with the abuelos, the ancestors, is Chen. So we suggested that she collaborates with Manuel because she was always doing, especially some of the embroidery of Manuel's works. And for the biennial, it was the first time that they actually collaborated, and that's when Chin started working also in her own pieces, mainly with fabrics and embroidery as well. And what you see there is a wooden base that reproduces the textiles they use in their garments. And on top of it, there is a sheet. Unfortunately, you cannot see, but it's embroidered in Maya Sotujil language. And then it's full of plants as offerings. The one in the middle is by Panamanian artist Lisette Jangwe Singh, and that one is called Panamafrica. And there's obviously patchwork, but what you see in that map is actually woven hair. And that is the result of a residency and a performance that she did in Mexico. And the end result is this beautiful woven hair piece that's sewn into that piece of fabric. And then on the right is Juana Valdez piece for the biennial. And it was a two-story high white cloth. On one side, which you can only see the shade, is an object that references her African roots. And in the front, you may not be able to read the words, but you see that it starts very light and it gets darker. So she's talking about whitening, but she's also talking about the fact that when she visited a store, a very well-known store in the United States called Home Depot, and she looked at the colors and how they put names on the colors of the paints, the lighter the color, the nicer the word. It was like sweet or beautiful or, virginous, whatever. And then as it went darker, as if getting a darker color, a darker skin was a negative connotation. So this is what she talks about in this piece. Next, please. And finally, I wanted to talk briefly about an exhibition that I did at the Art Nexus space, which is where I currently work, and three artists that were included in that exhibition. So after I curated the biennial and we decided to open this space in North Miami across the Museum of Contemporary Art, for me, it was just an obvious transition to start and to open the space with an exhibition focusing on works by either indigenous artists, artists of indigenous descent, or contemporary artists working on indigenous issues. So this exhibition presented the creative production of these members of indigenous communities mainly from Latin America. And they have, through their work, addressed issues related to different cosmologies or the problems that they experience in the past and in the present. So some of the artists that were included in this show were Manuel Chavajay, Marilyn Bororbor, Miriam Soria González, Antonio Pichilla, Julian Morales, Sandra Monterroso, and Sol Andrea Cocchang. So the piece on the left is by Sol Andrea Cocchang. I met her through the biennial. She actually answered a call for artists. She's originally from Guatemala. She lives as a child in Miami, of all places, and then she went to do her undergrad in Massachusetts and then her master's in Yale, and she actually teaches at Brown University. But she is of both Guatemalan Mayan ancestor and Chinese. So she combines both, and she talks in her work about, those mixing of cultures and how food is something that as we migrate, it comes with us. So this particular piece, she actually is a woven work of corn husks and other types of materials that she gets from different types of foods. The one in the middle is called The Last Circle, is by Juliet Morales. She's an indigenous artist from Colombia, from the Misak community, from the southwest of Colombia. And it has a very well-known symbol, which is the spiral, and in the middle is the house. But what's beautiful about this piece is that these two colors, the blue and the fuchsia, are the colors of their attire, of the women attire. And the blue represents the waters because they live in the mountains in the highlands. And the pink is pretty much the land. And what's there that I don't know if you can see is actually the house. And then on the right is work by Sandra Monterrosa that Giannina briefly mentioned. So Sandra Monterroso, her grandmother and her mother migrated to Guatemala City due to the Civil War. And in order to survive, the grandmother and the mother were seamstresses. But one thing that happened in what that happens and still in Guatemala is that the grandmother and the mother did not want the children to be, to be, I don't know how to say it, like they were like ostracized for being indigenous. So they didn't teach them the language, and they basically dressed them as Western people, like jeans and t-shirts and things like that. And it wasn't until she had already gone to college that she had a dream about her grandmother who had passed. And in that dream, her grandmother told her that her path as an artist, that in order for her to find the path as an artist, she had to look at her roots. So she went back and she started self-teaching herself the language and doing research about these traditions and the resilience of her peoples, the Mayan cultures. So this piece that you see, what she also did is she started learning about natural dyes. And she looked into this piece in particular is made with cochinilla, and she also uses the shell. So I think that's it because we want to make sure that we have time for Q&A, and I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you all for sharing this with us.
Thank you, Francine. So unfortunately, we are running short on time, so we will not have time for a Q&A, but thank you to you, Francine, Giannina, and Lisu for your presentations. And a big thank you to our sponsors. The recording will be available on YouTube in the next week and can also be found on SDA's website. For more programming like this, I encourage you to join SDA today. It's a great community, and if weekly textile talks are something you value, please consider making a donation today. Thank you all again for presenting and everybody for joining. Bye.